Hi, I'm Ross Rosenberg. Welcome to my latest video, or if you are on my podcast channel, to my latest podcast. Today, like many of my recordings, I talk about an idea, something that just comes to mind, and usually it's from a psychotherapy session that I just had. And no different from most other ideas, I just got done with a therapy session talking to a client of mine who is an SLD, and people who follow me know that I renamed codependency to self-love deficit disorder and codependent to self-love deficient, SLD or SLDD. And a part of my 11-stage program is to discuss, overcome the addiction, the self-love deficit disorder addiction, SLDD addiction. Whether I talked about it back when I used the word codependency or with SLDD, it is an addiction. I have plenty of YouTube videos. I think I have a podcast on this, and I have a full-length seminar video or audio at my website, selfloverecovery.com, just on the subject of this addiction, SLDD addiction. But I promise you, absolutely promise you, that if you're an SLD, if you're codependent, you'll have to believe me that it is an addiction and it has all the properties of an addiction. If you're an SLD, you know what I mean. SLDs, when they are in a relationship, they are not dealing with a chronic problem they've had their whole life, which is pathological loneliness. So if you go back to my SLDD pyramid, which essentially explains the foundational elements responsible for the creation of SLDD or codependency. At the bottom is attachment trauma, the experience of being traumatized by a childhood or attachment period with a pathological narcissistic parent and a codependent parent. From there is core shame, which is the fundamental belief that you're not lovable, you're not worth love, you're not good enough, you're fundamentally flawed, and for some people say broken. And from core shame is this experience of existential emptiness. I call it pathological loneliness. Deep, bone-aching pain of loneliness that is nowhere near the experience of what I call garden variety loneliness, which kind of sucks too. From the pathological loneliness level of the pyramid is the addiction, SLDD addiction. And that is the compulsive urge to make the loneliness go away through a person's drug of choice. And SLDD addiction, the drug of choice, is the relationship. SLDs are not addicted to narcissists. In fact, they don't fall in love with narcissists. They fall in love with compelling, charming, charismatic, sexy, seductive people. A soulmate who they later will find out is their cellmate. I love to say that because that's my dad's contribution to my book. What did he say back in the olden days? He says, all soulmates eventually wake up to their cellmate reality, or some version of that. So if you are an SLD and you have this addiction, it means that when you are not in a relationship, you are overwhelmed by this deep, painful loneliness. Pathological loneliness is the withdrawal symptom of this addiction. I haven't smoked in 16 years, but there are certain specific withdrawal symptoms of each addiction, and they are specific to the drug. And this withdrawal symptom makes you feel so alone, so empty. Your existence is floating in the air, and the loneliness reminds you of how painfully shame-based you are, how broken you are, and it goes to the deepest part of your pathological psyche. And the only way for that pain to go away is finding your drug, and that's the relationship. Because of the human magnet syndrome, codependents, SLDs, when they meet a pathological narcissist, it's the perfect opposite match. And that is talked about in great detail in my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome book, and many other videos, audio and podcasts. So if the relationship is the addiction, then the SLD, to quell, to neutralize, to medicate the withdrawal symptom, the pathological loneliness, they have to find a relationship, and then that naturally is going to be a pathological narcissist You know, the dance, the tango of the codependent caretaker and the narcissist care needer, that pathological, luscious, delicious, wonderful, ecstatic initial experience of euphoria, when all the pain goes away, they melt into this one dysfunctional relationship. It is not a relationship based upon two interdependent, self-loving people, but two lost, painfully shame-based, painfully lonely, painfully addicted, because the narcissist is addicted too. I just don't talk about that as much as I talk about it with the SLDs. They come together and they escape their pain because of the relationship. So essentially, each person is the drug for the other to take care of their existential loneliness and shame. So that is the basic introduction or reminder that SLDD is also an addiction. It's many things. By the way, I am probably 4 months away from my latest book to be published, and it's called The Codependency Revolution. It's going to be my masterpiece. I've spent 3.5 years writing it, whereas the first 2 editions of the Human Magnet Syndrome, I spent 11 months each. But I bring it up as I talk about this process in the greatest detail than I ever have. If you're interested and want to get on the waiting list or want to know when the book is going to be published, just shoot us an email at help@selfloverecovery.com. So I've established the basics of SLDD addiction. It's based upon everything that, if you follow me, you know about SLDs or codependents and how they interact with narcissists and the yin and the yang. It also incorporates a concept that I have videos on and a podcast on called relationship math, where basically it says a codependent or an SLD and a pathological narcissist are not completely developed, emotionally stunted people. So in a mathematical sense, they represent a half of a person. The half and a half come together and equal 1, and 1 is a half of a relationship. So the codependent and the narcissist need each other to escape their pain. And in the relationship, they believe the pain is kept at bay or it has gone away, but they lose their autonomy, or if they should have had it. The bad news for the codependent or the SLD is that things turn to crap soon, while the narcissist, not so much. Whereas healthy relationships with people who are self-love abundant, who live happily in their life and want a relationship to enhance it, are 1. 1 + 1 is 2. 2 people that come together in a relationship and feel fulfilled and happy. And because of that, they live their lives together while feeling wonderful about themselves in the world in which they live. If we put together what I've discussed so far, the SLDD pyramid, to explain exactly what this disorder is, which what I didn't say, at the very top of this pyramid is all the symptoms. And unfortunately, everyone thinks codependency or SLDD are the symptoms, but really, no, it's foundational or fundamental causes. So if we put together the pyramid explanation, we understand pathological loneliness and its connection to core shame and trauma. We understand pathological loneliness as a withdrawal symptom of SLDD addiction. And then we understand the addiction itself. We can better understand why it's so easy, if not seemingly unavoidable, for SLDDs to avoid a relationship, falling in love with a pathological narcissist and being unable to get out of it, to break free from it. And those reasons about being unable to break free are content and topics that are not going to be discussed here and are available on other podcasts or my seminar videos on my selfloverecovery.com website. So the purpose of this video is to talk about a concept that I created today with the help of a client. In fact, I believe she even brought up the term drug happiness. Drug happiness. And here is the backstory that will help me orient you, the listener and the viewer, on why this concept, drug happiness, is so critically important to know. She, like every SLD I work with, has at one time been in a relationship in which she was powerlessly addicted to her pathologically narcissistic lover, and in this case, her boyfriend, who is a sociopath. If you follow my work, pathological narcissists represent one of three personality disorders: narcissistic, borderline, or antisocial personality disorder. People with antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD, are sociopaths. So for her, it was a huge and remarkable, incredible achievement to break free from her boyfriend. And we're going to call him Chris. Chris is the charismatic, sociopathic, always acting sweet, nice, and lovable when he wants something. And when he doesn't, he is downright nasty, neglectful, and just not around. And like any addict, they need the drug that best fits them. And Chris fit her hand in glove because of the human magnet syndrome. They had been in a relationship 7 years. He not only has sociopathic traits, he also was drug abusing, perhaps drug addicted. He was incredibly dishonest, incredibly self-centered, manipulative, grandiose. He had all sorts of symptoms that match up with what we know about pathological narcissists. He could never be nice to her for any extended period of time. The best he could do would be nice to her right before and during the times with her that made him feel good, or what he planned, doctored, or systematically organized so that events would come together and that would make my client feel close to him and therefore give him what he needed. If we look at the relationship as the drug, we understand that my client felt terrible pathological loneliness before meeting her drug, before meeting the narcissist. And in the relationship, she was free from the pain, the terrible existential bone aching pain of pathological loneliness. It's counterproductive and somewhat contradictory. SLDs, when they're in a relationship with a pathological narcissist, are not happy. They are not. Only in the beginning. That's during the limerence stage, also discussed in my book. They're not happy, and they keep trying to be happy because they have this delusional belief that if they can just do the right thing at the right time, they'll be able to convince this narcissist, this lover of theirs, that they will want them and treat them well and just be nice to them. And that's the dysfunctional, for lack of better words, craziness of the disorder and the mixture of the narcissist and the SLD. In this addiction, it always is preceded by the loneliness, the relationship, the intense, quick, enmeshed bond of the half and the half individual, the eventual painful existence of the SLD in the relationship, not nearly as painful as being outside the relationship and being succumbing to the pathological loneliness, but the painful existence of always wanting to have the lover be loving, respecting, caring, protecting, trusting as much as they are, and never getting it, but still staying in a relationship, which essentially, in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, that is the definition of codependency, or SLDD. In the relationship, they are in love with the narcissist. All sorts of mental gymnastics, emotional gymnastics, delusional thought processes, gaslit thought processes, all sorts of anguish, self-created mental tricks to make someone believe the person that hurts them loves them, or the narcissist's gaslighting manipulation tricks to make that person, their SLD partner, love them when they're not actually being loving. And that is how these relationships work in the most simplistic way. So now let's fast forward it. The client finds my work, whether it's a podcast, YouTube, reads my Human Magnet Syndrome book, hears about me from another person that has sought psychotherapy with me, and they connect and begin what I call the self-love recovery process. The treatment program that solves or cures SLDD is my self-love recovery treatment program. It's 11 stages. It's complicated for me to explain, but for the purpose of this video, it is a solid program that always works. And I do mean always works. There has never been a negative outcome if someone has worked the 11 stages. When we get to the point where the relationship has broken apart, sometimes people start the psychotherapy or the treatment program with the relationship done. And they're lonely, they're hurt, and they find me. They want to get in the treatment program. Or the relationship is still thriving in the most dysfunctional way, painfully dysfunctional way, but thriving because the half plus half, they're getting what they need, and the SLD stays in because they don't want to be lonely, and therefore it seems like a loving but incredibly broken relationship. And in those cases, that's where the treatment starts. With this client that I introduced, she has these memories of her boyfriend, the sociopath that I talked about. And these memories are of them smiling and having a great time, of loving each other. And she cannot stop these memories from creeping in her mind. And this is at a time where she decided to break free from the relationship. She went through the terrible withdrawal period of the pathological loneliness, and it really is difficult, but she got through it, like all my clients do in the program. And now she's on the other side of the withdrawals, and she's having more good days than bad days. She understands all about her SLDD. She understands all about the pathological narcissist, and because of the treatment program, knows every important element, foundational element of her SLDD problem, so that she can address that, so that she can overcome the challenges and proactively get in front of them. But yet she came to a session and said, Ross, I keep thinking about him. I keep thinking about him. He was so handsome and he was so good in bed. And it's like the memories are like crystal clear videos or beautiful photos. And it just makes me like crave that beautiful man who I know wasn't good for me. So because she's been doing so well in treatment, she knows that it's a safe place to talk about her cravings, her obsessions, her compulsions, because this is an addiction. And me being an old addiction counselor, and when I say old, yes, I'm 62. I don't mean it that way, but I started doing this about 35 years ago. But me being an addiction counselor, it is the process of walking her through the phases of recovery, which then is on the other side of the withdrawal symptoms and the management of the thoughts, the beliefs, the impulses, the compulsions, the memories that leak into her consciousness. And what I explain to my SLDs is all addictions are at the center of the brain and a specific place of the brain. And I actually have a video on this. I think I referred to it before. It's the SLDD addiction video. And whether it's cigarettes, alcohol, sex, gambling, and it's tied into dopamine, a neurotransmitter, and the transfer of dopamine from one part of the brain to another that creates intense excitement, intense anticipation, and it drives the brain's need to get its chemical. So if it's cigarettes, it's nicotine. If it's alcohol, it's ETOH, ethyl alcohol. Cocaine, heroin, etc. If it's a process addiction, if it's love addiction, sex addiction, the chemical is the experience that, like all of the other chemical addictions, activate the pleasure center, the dopamine centers, and the craving of anticipation and euphoria. And when the brain feels like it has not gotten that level of chemical, it then sends alarm messages up to the thinking part of our brain, our cortex, our neocortex, our prefrontal cortex, the very outer part of our brain, in which is the most human part of people. And then there is this message: you must get the drug in order for the cravings or pain to go away. And from that is the explanation for why every addict, drugs, behavior, process addictions, they have irrational thoughts that just pop up out of nowhere, or just stick around and just in collection overwhelm them until one day they just can't manage them anymore, and they say, WTF, what the heck, and they just unconsciously go for it. And the next thing you know, you pick up a cigarette, you open up a bottle of beer, you hire a prostitute, you go shopping, or if you're an SLD, you find a relationship. And it doesn't necessarily mean going back to the pathological narcissist, which usually it is, but it is a relationship. And that's the relapse. And that is the essential mechanics of the relapse. That is why addictions are just plain old crazy. There is a biological, neurobiological brain process that is in command. It's a command center. The pleasure centers need certain amount of dopamine in order to give it that anticipatory excitement. And if it's not there, then it sends messages to the higher parts of the brain and creates distress, anxiety, loneliness, pain, and that motivates the thinking part of the brain is to do something to make the pain go away. And that is to get the drug of choice. And so when I am working with my SLD clients, like the one that I'm talking about, who has been free from her pathologically narcissistic boyfriend, and I believe in this case it has been 4 months since she's been in treatment. She still struggles with intermittent obtrusive thoughts, compulsions, the addiction, and that compels her to seek something that her brain is telling her, lying to her, fooling her, that is going to make her feel good. So because she's in treatment, because she's agreed to be accountable and communicative when she feels such compulsions or surges of need, she brings that to our session. And yesterday she talked about looking at a picture of her boyfriend and seeing that she looks so happy. Drug happy is the word she used. Drug happy. And she goes, that photo isn't lying to me. And she tried to convince me that photo, which was physical to her, but really more about her memories of him in that moment, showed a snapshot of a very happy woman with a very happy man. And we came up, thanks to her, like I said, I credit her in coming up with the term drug happy. I created an understanding of the concept of drug happy. The happiness that she remembers, that she identifies with, that she thinks is real, is really a combination of the dysfunctional forces of the addiction, of the human magnet syndrome, attraction dynamics, and how it keeps people entrapped in it. And all of the other dynamics and processes that I've explained comes together and leads her brain to think that was a beautiful moment. Because underneath it, that part of the brain in the pleasure center is saying, get me the drug. And that is why, by the way, incidentally, in all 12-step programs, step 1 is to say you're powerless over the drug, and that because of that, your life is unmanageable. They help you understand that it never goes away and you always have to be on your toes. And so in that moment, she is remembering the picture, the photo, the memory, and she's feeling the happiness. She's looking at the happiness. And that is when I changed the focus into drug happiness. In conclusion, I hope the discussion of SLDD addiction and the drug happy concept was helpful. Please don't forget, addictions ruin lives. Some kill people. The addictions have a life of their own. If left to their own devices, it would destroy a person and everything that they love and cherish, whether it's heroin, sex, gambling, alcohol, or self-love deficit disorder. It will make you try to get something that is never true. It will make you want something that you believe will make you happy and solve your problems, but always undermines that process and destroys you. SLDD is a virulent addiction. Its withdrawal symptom is pathological loneliness. It operates by the same biochemical, neurological functions as all other addictions. It tricks your brain into wanting something that is bad for the person, but good for the brain. It sabotages your thinking and it sabotages your thought processes, the same thing, your insight and judgment. Think of drug happy. Remember the concept drug happy, so that if and when you have that moment of time that you recollect some memory, whether it was real or somewhat on the delusional side, you must reject it. You must tell yourself, it is a lie. It's a trick. You must force yourself to explain the event in which you remember being drug happy. Explain it from the beginning to the middle to the end. One of my favorite topics I developed when treating sex addiction was play the video to the end. And if you do that, you'll always find out that drug happy is an illusion. It's part of a delusional thinking process. Don't fall prey to it. There's no happy in drug happy. Happiness comes from being a recovering SLD, where you battle forward and beyond the withdrawal process, the pathological loneliness, because there is another side. And that other side is experienced through my self-love recovery treatment program. It's an 11-stage program. I have a lot of information about it at selfloverecovery.com. A lot of seminars and educational audio and video resources. So thank you once again for considering what I have to say and what I share with you. It means a lot to me. The idea that I can help one person, let alone hundreds, thousands of them, makes me sleep better at night. So you guys always rock, and I would be nothing if I didn't have the idea that so many people needed to learn the information that I learned that has helped me become self-love abundant. Please consider supporting this podcast by leaving a review if it's a YouTube channel, subscribing, and then going to selfloverecovery.com and checking out what I have to say, what I have to offer. Be well, be healthy, and always remember it's never too late to be the self-love abundant person you should have been. By the way, I stole that saying from someone else, George Eliot. Bye-bye.